Ride along each week as we share proven strategies to strengthen your business, energize your team, and create the business success you've been dreaming about. And now, here's your host, Rich Allen.
How well are you and your key leaders doing at pace setting? Welcome to the Ultimate Business Tune-Up Podcast, where our one and only goal is to help you tune up your business so you can have the long-lasting success and fulfillment that comes from owning a solid, profitable, and sustainable business. Each week we dive deep into a single topic related to improving your business, improving your team engagement, or improving your relationship with your customers. This week I want to discuss a topic that's often a blind spot for many business owners and talented leaders. You've heard it said that you're only a leader to the extent that others will follow you. Well, today I want to put a slight twist on that saying and phrase it this way. You're only a leader to the extent that others are able to follow you. That's why my question for you today is, how well are you and your key leaders doing at pace setting? One of my favorite things to do when I'm trying to wind down or just relax is to watch reruns of old track meets. Yes, I'm a geeky introvert when I'm not actively engaged with my clients, helping them solve their toughest business challenges. I'm sure that you have your own quirky something that you enjoy doing when you've got free time to kill. Well, mine is watching track meets. I was a big runner as a kid and well into my middle-aged years. My specialty was the half-mile and mile races before it went to the metric distances of 800 and 1,500 meters years ago. And as you can imagine, I'm a firm believer that the half-mile race is the most difficult track race to master. It requires the speed of a quarter-miler and the endurance of a long-distance runner. Anything less, and it's going to be very difficult to be competitive. Which is why my favorite race to watch these days is the 800 meters, the metric half-mile. It's long enough for the runners to use some strategy, but not too long to lose your interest. Last week, I was watching an 800 meters race where they had a pace setter scheduled to run the first 400 meters of the race. The pace setter's job was simple. Set the pace for the first lap at a tempo that would help the top runners get close to a world record. It's pretty common in professional track meets to have a pace setter for the mid to long distance races. It keeps these particular races from being slow tactical races where everyone waits until the last half lap to really start running, and every race turns into a sprint finish. So the pace setter in this particular 800-meter race had been given a very specific time that they were to hit for the first lap of the race. But they also know that to be effective, they must bring the other runners along with them as they keep a quick pace from the start. When the starter's gun went off, the pace setter sprinted from the starting line. He was determined to do his job and hit the pace for the first 400 meters of the race. But he started like a 100-meter sprint. None of the other runners could stay anywhere close to him. And by the time he hit the backstretch, he was already 20 meters ahead of the front runner. The gap was too big for even the best runners to close. But rather than look back to see whether the other runners were close behind him, he just continued to run hard, determined to hit the target pace. At the 200-meter mark, he was over 40 yards ahead of the pack of runners. And he kept going, oblivious to the fact that no one was following him. As he entered the home stretch of his one lap, his lead had ballooned to well over 60 meters. He was so far ahead of the field when he hit the 400-meter mark that he decided he would try to win the race himself rather than drop out and let the elite runners have the spotlight. In the end, he couldn't maintain his pace, and he quickly was caught and passed by the more talented runners, and his primary role as pace setter for the race was a total disaster. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, why am I telling you this story? If you're not a track geek like me, you're probably rolling your eyes right now. But here's why I think this matters. There are a lot of business owners and key leaders who are doing the very same thing with their team members in their business every day. Rather than being a good pace setter, they're running so fast and getting so far ahead of their team that their team finally just gives up in frustration, stress, and anxiety about their job. Don't believe me? Let me share a perfect example that I witnessed very recently. I work with an organization that recently had a major shakeup in their key leadership positions. The older, more experienced leaders were no longer in favor with the board of advisors, and they decided to make some changes in the leadership. They decided the business needed new, fresh thinking, and so they promoted a young, promising superstar to the top position. He, in turn, hand-selected two of his peers to take the two top roles on his leadership team. From an outsider's perspective, this new, young, energetic team was a dream team, full of enthusiasm, commitment, and willingness to make the changes that everyone felt were needed to reposition the business for success. So they went to work like sprinters running a 100-meter race. And because they knew they wanted to move quickly, they looked for any weak leaders who were slowing the pace of change. As they identified problem areas, they very quickly found others who had the same fast-twitch tendencies to take over these departments and divisions. You could sense a new level of excitement in the business, and the board of advisors was notably pleased. Things were changing quickly, and all indications were that the changes were for the better. So when I met with one of the departments recently, I was very surprised at the comments coming from the supervisors and individual contributors. I expected the feedback and feelings about the changes to be positive and uplifting. The old guard was gone and a new day was dawning, bringing opportunities for many who had been stifled for years. But that's not what I heard. Instead, I heard that the leaders were running so fast and moving so quickly that they were all left feeling that there was no way they could keep pace. The stress level was through the roof. Everyone was unsecure about their job. They had just witnessed several others, some of them their friends and colleagues, let go without any warning or any obvious reason. The new leaders were introducing new strategies and concepts at a pace that seemed to be unsustainable, at least for them. They were frustrated, stressed out, confused, and a bit angry. Turns out the top leaders had surrounded themselves with others who had the fast twitch muscle, and they were all driving the business forward at a breakneck pace. Meanwhile, the team members who were tasked with executing the new strategies felt like they were on a hamster wheel with no way to step off for a break. After meeting with the team members individually, I sat down with the department manager, and he immediately started talking about the new strategies, the new framework, new protocols, and new standards. He was clearly in sync with the new leadership, and they saw him as one of their rising stars. He was on fire and still had a long list of new ideas he wanted to introduce to his team. That's when I stopped him and asked him to watch the 800-meter race with the pace setter that went out way too fast. He watched the video and enjoyed talking about the race, but it was clear he didn't get my point until I finally said, "Bill, that pace setter is you, and you're going too fast for your team to keep up." We sat in that moment for quite a long time, and I shared with him that he was only a leader to the extent that the others were able to follow him. It took a moment for him to get it, but when he did, he could see it clearly. In his meetings with his key leaders, he was doing all the talking. They were simply saying yes and agreeing to everything that he had already decided to do. What else could they do or say? He had already thought of the problem, the root causes, and the solutions. They were simply there to execute his vision of the future. He wasn't asking them for their thoughts and opinions. He wasn't asking probing questions about what they were seeing from their perspective. He wasn't coming to the meeting with a challenge or issue and simply offering it up for discussion. And the reality is, he's a smart guy who knows his business, and he doesn't really need their perspectives, unless, that is, he wants the plan to be their plan too. How about you? Are you moving your business forward at a pace that's sustainable for your team members? Are you engaging them in the big discussions about what to work on next or how to improve your customers' experience with your business? Are you coming to the meetings with more questions than statements? Or are you the smartest guy or gal in the room when you meet with your team? Are you the one that has all the great ideas, the big thinker, the world's best strategist? Or worse, are you running slower than others on your team? Are you allowing them to do all the work while you simply take it easy, not pushing the pace, but just enjoying the ride? To be a great leader, you've got to be a great mentor and coach, which means you need to set the pace for your business and your team. You've got to bring them along with you by involving them in the big decisions of the business. You've got to share with them what's happening along the way, even if it doesn't impact them directly or shouldn't be any of their business. If you treat them like it should be their business and teach them why you made the tough decision you did, then they'll be better equipped to make similar good decisions when they come across a similar challenge. Far too often, leaders think that their position gives them the power and privilege of making decisions and setting direction without having to share their thinking or their logic. It may be true, but it's not what great leaders do. Great leaders know their why, share their why, and use their why to guide the most important decisions of the business. And along the way, they teach, mentor, guide, and coach others in their business to be as good at leading as they are. If you want to build a solid, sustainable business, you'll be a good pace setter for your team. If others aren't following closely, don't be afraid to slow the pace down just a bit. Owning a business is a long-distance race. You don't need to sprint. If you do, you'll be running the race all by yourself. As always, if you have specific questions or would like to bounce around some thoughts on this topic, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask. I'd love to share some specific ideas with you that you could use to become a better coach, a better mentor, or a better pace setter for your team. And do me a favor, share this podcast episode with your fellow business owners. They may be one of those leaders who needs to slow down the pace and let their team off the hamster wheel sooner than later. Thanks for joining me today. Be sure to tune in next week when we're going to discuss strategies to increase customer loyalty. You won't want to miss it. Meanwhile, if you have a question, suggestion, or would simply like to connect, shoot me an email at rich@tourtoprofit.com. Now go make it a great week, and whatever you do, ride hard.
Thank you for listening to the Ultimate Business Tune-Up. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, find more resources at tourtoprofit.com and connect with Rich by sending a message to rich@tourtoprofit.com. Until next time, ride hard.